Good morning. Welcome to those of you that are worshiping with us on YouTube. We invite you to prepare your elements for communion. Please share with the church office or with me any joys and concerns that you have. We've shared those here for the folks that are gathered. Let's stand and sing, His Name is Wonderful. So the two principal images of Epiphany, the season that comes right after the 12 days of Christmas, are the arrival of the Magi. We looked at that last week. And the image of light, and the idea of light overcoming the darkness that's in that time of year when the days have started to get a little longer and the sunlight is returning back into the world. So we look at the beautiful prologue to the Gospel of John. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The Word was with God in the beginning. Everything came into being through the Word, and without the Word, nothing came into being. What came into being through the Word was life, and the life was the light for all people. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness doesn't extinguish the light. A man named John was sent from God. He came as a witness to testify concerning the light, so that through him everyone would believe in the light. He himself wasn't the light, but his mission was to testify concerning the light. The true light that shines on all people was coming into the world. The light was in the world, and the world came into being through the light, but the world didn't recognize the light. The light came to his own people, and his own people didn't welcome him. But those who did welcome him, those who believed in his name, he authorized to become God's children, born not from blood, nor from human desire or passion, but born from God. The Word became flesh and made his home among us. We have seen his glory, glory like that of a Father's only Son, full of grace and truth. So over the last several weekends, it seemed like almost every week when I'm home on Saturday, the Harry Potter movies have been on, non-stop, morning to evening, running Saturday, and they were on again yesterday, and I assume that they finish up today. Sometimes they go all the way into the night, sometimes they take a break so you can get a nap in, and go take a shower and eat, and then come back and watch the rest of them, because there's eight movies, right? So if you're not familiar, Harry Potter is a series of 7 novels written by the British author J.K. Rowling, and is really an amazing phenomenon. The first book was published in 1997, And in 2021, there were already the 7 novels, which were made into 8 movies. And in Orlando, Florida, Universal Studio has Harry Potter World. Like, there's a whole giant, I think 2 separate theme parks. Ask Bunny about it. She was down there with her kids and grandkids, so she's got a Hogwarts t-shirt, sweatshirt that she wears. Pretty cool. So this thing just like exploded onto the world. As of February 28, 2018, the books have sold 500 million copies. In 2020, it was the 3rd highest grossing film series. The total value of the Harry Potter franchise estimated at $25 billion as of a few years ago. So just kind of hit the world, took off. As opposed to, like, they finally made the Lord of the Rings movies. I read those in the 70s, right? This stuff's been around forever. Dune, they just redid. I'm totally geeking out today, folks. We had Star Wars music earlier. We're talking about Harry Potter. Now, I'm not the Harry Potter expert. I know there's at least one in the room. I will not make eye contact with her right now. But if I say anything wrong, I'm sure I'll get corrected later on. But I'm not going to get too specific. So our kids really loved them. I remember being at Boy Scout camp the year that the last book came out, and there was this feud going on between the boys who had read the last book and the boys who hadn't read the last book, because it was literally like they had to buy it the day before they came to camp. And the one who had read the book, Cameron Carney, was teasing all the others, like going to tell them what happened, and they were like, no, tell me. And he's like, no, I'm going to tell you. And then it was just, and I didn't know anything. I didn't know any clue what was going on. But we went and took the boys, watched the movie. So it was nice rewatching them off and on over the last 6 weekends, right? You could just kind of come in for a little while. So the thing that struck me in the very early movies is how important the language is. So the setting is that the heroes of the show are younger children. They are sent to a school for wizards. And this is a secret place. There's a world of people who can and do magic, and there's the world of the muggles, the non-magical people, and these people coexist. So these young people are off to learn how to do magic. And it's very well written and clever and funny, and lots of examples of someone mispronouncing a word, and so the spell doesn't happen quite correctly. But it's this importance of words, right? So you have to have the ability to do magic. There's often some kind of physical gesture or a wand or a piece of a mushroom or something, but there's always the words. The words somehow make the magic happen. So that's kind of a common theme in this area, right? We all know magical words like abracadabra, right? Which kind of pops up a time or two in the Harry Potter books. Abracadabra, of the kind of words we associate with magic, is historically maybe the oldest one, as early as the 2nd century AD. A Latin medical journal or writing said that to get well, a sick person should wear an amulet around the neck, a piece of parchment inscribed with a triangular formula derived from the word abracadabra, almost 2,000 years ago. And they think that may have, and that the shape of the amulet will act like a funnel to drive the sickness out of the body. So, try it, I don't know. Here's a picture of how to do it. You can do it later, see if that helps with anything. So, abracadabra might come from an Aramaic phrase, abracadabra. Aramaic is the language Jesus spoke, meaning I will create as I speak. It might come from a Chaldean word. Chaldean were the Babylonians, so even more ancient. A phrase meaning perish like the word. So abracadabra goes back about 2,000 years, a word that people believed caused magical things to happen or caused things to happen. Hocus pocus is not quite as old, but as early as the Middle Ages, it seems to have popped up. It appears to come from the text from the Latin Mass, from the Catholic Mass. And there is a point in the Catholic Mass where our Catholic brothers and sisters believe that as the words are spoken, the bread and the wine physically become the body and blood of Christ. It's called transubstantiation. And the words that are spoken are hoc est enim corpus meum. And as the priest speaks those words and they believe that the substance changes from physical bread and wine to the body and blood of Christ, the words hoc est corpus, right? Hoc est, hoc est. Is that where they came from? We're not sure. Maybe. Other scholars think that they say there was a Norse magician named Hocus Pocus, and maybe that comes from his name. More recently, Open Sesame comes from the 1700s, a French novelist who wrote Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves. And this one they think is probably a creation of the author. He may have used some folk tales from that area. But sesame seed grows in a seed pot that splits open when it reaches maturity. And so they think that that image of the sesame seed opening was the phrase open sesame. Another scholar says that it's the Hebrew word for password. But that doesn't really work very well because in the story, the hero's brother gets caught in the cave and he goes through a list. He forgets he forgets open sesame, and he goes through a list of other grains trying to open the door, and none of them work. So there's pretty good indication that it was sesame had something to do with the sesame, this image of the sesame seeds opening. So there are some images of how we as human beings believe in the power of words to do more than they are just words, right? So in the text we read today, which I just always have this urge to just slow down and just like savor every word. We think it may have been poetry, we think it may have been even song, kind of some song or liturgy that they used in worship. But every time I said the word was actually the Greek word logos. And we've talked about that here before as we've looked at that text. And I've often tried to link this idea of the Word becoming flesh. The Word was God. The Logos was God, was with God. It's just really kind of confusing and out there and kind of makes your brain hurt a little bit. From this pulpit, have tried to link it to the idea of Sophia wisdom that we see in the Old Testament. And I've told you that. And I may have been a little mistaken in that in research I've done this week, which links it more to the idea of what logos, what that word meant to Greco-Roman culture 2,000 years ago and even longer. So Plato, Aristotle, Socrates, those guys, remember, they were 500 years before Jesus. So it's kind of brain-numbing to think about all the historical things that happened in that time. So about the same time that the Old Testament writers were kind of finalizing the writings of the Old Testament, the Greek philosophers were writing in their home. And for that time on to the time of Jesus, and 100 years later, by the time this Gospel of John is written, this idea of logos is out there in the world. So here's a pretty technical, fancy, big word definition of logos. This comes from PBS. Again, I'll read slowly, because when I reread it this morning, I was like, holy cow, that's a whole lot of stuff. This is logos, a principle originating in classical Greek thought, which refers to a universal divine reason, eminent in nature. Eminent means indwelling. Eminent in nature, yet transcending all oppositions and imperfections in the cosmos and humanity. An eternal and unchanging truth present from the time of creation, available to everyone who seeks it. A unifying and liberating, revelatory, revealing, a teaching force which reconciles the human with the divine, manifested in the world as an act of God's love in the form of the Christ. And if that wasn't enough for you, here's slide 2. The Greek word logos, traditionally meaning word, thought, principle, or speech, has been used among both philosophers and theologians. In most of its usages, logos is marked by 2 main distinctions. The first dealing with human reason, so the human thought process, the rationality in the human mind, and the second with universal intelligence, the universal ruling force governing and revealing through the cosmos to humankind. So logos is this kind of overarching idea of the intelligence, the thought process that we have as humans and that we share with God. So the Greek and Roman philosophers would not have used it in the same way that the Jewish and the Christian writers would use it, because they had a whole different idea of God and gods and their religious things. But the idea of this kind of universal intelligence that's out there, the writer of this gospel picked up to use as what happened when Jesus was born. When we say Emmanuel, God with us, when we say that Jesus was God in human form, how did that work? And this author says that this logos that existed before all time, in the beginning was the logos, and the logos was with God, was God. That force came down into Jesus. That word became flesh. So that's like, wow, like super confusing, hard to think of, hard to fathom. So rather than thinking about the word, the logos, the divine eternal intelligence of God coming down into a human being, I thought maybe today we would look at the idea of a word became flesh. And that's, at least for me, is a little easier to understand maybe. So the word that the author here uses to describe Jesus, who he doesn't name, over and over again is light. Right? So the logos, the divine intelligence, comes down into our world, and it comes as light. Well, obviously not, because Jesus was a human being, but the symbolism is there. What came into being through the word was life, and the life was the light for all people. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness doesn't extinguish the light. The true light that shines on all people was coming into the world. The light was in the world, and the world came into being through the light, but the world didn't recognize the light. So this image of kind of a little more, something we could understand, maybe, light, Jesus coming as light. So let's look at a word becoming flesh. And maybe it's something you might think of with your star word, if that word for you makes any sense for this year. How would you take your word, if that rings true to you? How would that word become flesh? How would any word become flesh in a human being? How would light become flesh? Now, light and darkness is a really powerful image. In the Harry Potter movies, in fact, and I'll probably get this wrong, the most powerful charm was the Patronus charm, which is, if you've seen the movies, is those times when the dark evil forces are forced away by an image that is almost pure light. And right, the light, you've been in a dark place, the light, no matter how dark the darkness is, the light wins. The smallest candle or thing would always force away the darkness, and that's the image we have of Jesus coming into the world. But what does that look like? How does a word become flesh? Sometimes the most powerful light comes from the most unexpected places or in the darkest moments. Where in my life have I seen a word, this word light, become flesh? I think of constant sources of light becoming flesh in my life, my family, my wife, my sisters, cousins, and nieces and nephews and in-laws, my friends, those of you here and in the various churches I've served many times are light for me and to me, sometimes when you may not even realize it. One story that comes to mind that I've held just for over a decade. I know I started a while back with my, I've now opened the lockbox on the stories about Kevin being a delivery guy. So there are even more of these than there are bike riding stories. And so we've got years and years and years of these to come. I shared a little bit about one about going in the place where they make the wheels for the train car. I told that in this sermon a while back. If you missed it, boy, howdy, go back and catch that one. But for about 2 years, I worked as a delivery guy. I was finished with seminary, working on my ordination process. It was that time when I was out of ministry. I'd done ministry for a long time, done music for a long time, and I just needed a job. And some days were really, really fun. Some days when you're out on the road driving around yourself, if everything goes well, then it's great, and nobody bother you. They'd send all my deliveries electronically, and if everything went well, a great day. If the weather was nice, but things could change in an instant, right? One of the main things I learned from that job is don't rush, don't hurry. Mistakes happen when you hurry, and you're in a business of hurrying. And you got people on the radio yelling at you to hurry, and then things go badly. So here's one day when things went badly. So it was the end of the day. As I worked there for a while, they trusted me enough to send me out driving a truck, which was a huge mistake for all involved. But I was driving a 26-foot box truck around Kansas City and even Wichita, Omaha, various places. I had no business doing that. No training. They didn't give me any training. It's a terrible company. But one day I was out in a truck, and toward the end of the day, and I got a call on the radio to head south to Grandview to pick up something that needed to come back to our warehouse in North Kansas City. I was not happy, because getting stuck in Grandview at 5 o'clock meant traffic, the Grandview Triangle. Who knows when I would get back home? There were many days when I was responsible for picking up Josh from his after-school care, or Adam from soccer practice, and Melody was working way out south, and if I got stuck, would I make it? Many days I pulled into the parking lot of Davidson Elementary driving a 26-foot box truck to pick up Josh, and then we would go to the warehouse together, or I'd have to go back to Penske. The poor kid, he loved it, he thought it was fun. So I was not in a good mood going to Grandview to pick up this thing, a place I'd never been. So I pulled in, went into the warehouses. Towards the end of the day, they were basically done for the day as well. Couldn't find anybody to help me find what I was supposed to pick up. Supposed to pick up one pallet. So pallet are those metal things that are, wooden things that are about 4 feet by 4 feet. They fit conveniently into trucks. That's why trucks are a certain width, and I learned all that stuff. One pallet of stuff. So I identified some pallets that looked like they were ready to go, and I kept asking what am I supposed to pick up? And they kept pointing to the lady that was in the office behind a door on the phone. And I waited, and I had on my red delivery guy shirt, and I kept looking at my watch, and I was very impatient, and I kept pointing at things. She's on the phone. I was like, this one? And wait. And so finally, I swear to you that I pointed at a pallet and she nodded yes. And I took that as my clue, and I got my pallet jack and I got it on the truck and was gone. So it needed to go, you're already laughing. It needed to go back to our warehouse. So I dropped it off at the warehouse. At the end of the day, went and got Josh or Adam or whatever I was supposed to do. Thought everything was fine. It was not. Walked into work the next morning, 7, 8 o'clock in the morning. It wasn't in the early mornings. I had to go to Wichita. We'd get there at 6 because A semi-tractor trailer truck would come from St. Louis every day. They would drive overnight. They would be at our place by 6 o'clock in the morning. They would unload things that needed to be delivered out to Kansas City or Omaha or Wichita. But I wasn't on that route that day. By the time I got there, the tractor trailer truck was already gone. And I was just coming in to do my work for the day. I was going to be in a truck again. And my manager, who was not my favorite human being on the planet, said, "Well, you had a good day yesterday, didn't you?" And I thought I did. It turns out, of course, that the thing that I picked up was not the right thing. It was the wrong thing. And it was already on the truck going back to St. Louis. And the woman that was on the phone with me called, irate that it was the wrong thing, and told them how rude and impatient I had been the day before, that I just ran into the building, grabbed something, ran out as quickly as I could, which is not true, but it doesn't matter at that point. Now, this story has gone to the dispatchers in St. Louis, my co-workers who didn't know me my name, but they knew that 8898 had screwed up the day before, because that's how close we were. We all called each other by numbers. My best friend was 8703. So this is the culture of this place. So my manager is just gleefully telling the story of what an idiot I was to anyone that would listen. Now here's the good news. The good news is that the truck with the thing on it that wasn't supposed to be on it was stuck in Kansas City. It wasn't to Columbia or St. Louis yet, but they had mechanical problems. And the truck was actually somewhere still in town being worked on, but that also meant that he couldn't come back to drop off the thing that I put on it that wasn't supposed to be on it. And he was in a hurry because he had to get back to St. Louis because the stuff on his truck had to meet another truck that was going right. So it's just like this complete, So somebody decided that they could send another truck, one of our 26-foot trucks, to the garage where the semi was, back the two trucks up together, and make a transfer of the pallet from one truck to the other. This did not seem like a good idea, but I assumed since I was the idiot responsible that I would be doing that job, and they said, "Oh, no, you're going back to Grandview." Great. So now we had two trucks that were working several hours because I screwed up. So, go back to Grandview, meet the lovely lady who told me again what a horrible human being I was, how bad I screwed up, and loaded the correct thing in the truck that was supposed to be back at our warehouse by the end of the day. When I left our warehouse, I had a couple of other things to be delivered. The Grandview and then go out to Kansas City, Kansas. They were two pallets that were packed really, really, really high, wrapped in plastic, but not very well, that they were at the back end of my truck. Since I really didn't know what I was doing. When I pulled into the Staples warehouse out in Kansas City, Kansas, I had the two big pallets that were filled with 3-ring binders, packed about 8 feet tall, wrapped in plastic, and this other pallet that I picked up from the lady in Grandview, backed up to the dock, went inside, found somebody to check in, lifted the back of my truck open, and those two 8-foot tall pallets full of 3-ring binders had come loose and collapsed. And the back of my truck was filled on the floor with 1,000 3-ring binders. At which point I cried. This has been going on for like 3 hours that morning of people just telling me what an idiot I was. And me recognizing that they were kind of right. And I thought, this is it, man. I'm just gonna walk home. It's 20 miles, I don't care. I'm done. And this kind woman wearing shorts and steel-toed boots and an orange fluorescent safety thing driving a forklift with a hard hat. I don't know if she saw my face or my body language or if she was just that kind of person. And she let out a string of cuss words that I will not repeat. And I thought, oh man, here we go. She's going to come at me. And then she says, those idiots that pack those pallets, they never get it right. This happens all the time. Ugh. And then she said, I have to sort those when they come off the truck. So they're already out. She said, if you will help me sort those 3-ring binders by the size and the shape and the color into different piles, you will really, really help me out. So I don't know how long we spent there together, calling off the numbers, the catalog numbers of 3-ring binders at the Staples warehouse on the loading dock. And I got back in the truck and I took the thing that I was supposed to pick up and I got it back to our place and everything turned out okay. But man, it was really dark. Seems silly now as I cry again. Did she know? Or is that just who she was? Was she light to me that day? Or was she light to everybody every day? I don't know. But she was a word that had become flesh in a very dark time. As we begin this year, maybe choose a word that you would like to become flesh this year. Maybe it's light, maybe it's another word, maybe it's something that we need. Maybe it's different every day. But know that you are a word become flesh. You are the divine intelligence already here on earth. You have the ability to be all of those things in this world, just as Christ was when he was here. Let us pray. Star of wonder, light of life, in you we find hope and meaning, and so we fix our gaze on you. Reveal to us the hurts of the world, great and small, elaborate and simple, and help us discern where we can offer the life and wonder your people crave. Star of night, light of wisdom, in you we find grace and direction, and so we fix our gaze on you. Reveal to us the path that needs clearing, where hate has caused harm and disaster wreaks havoc, that we may follow your wisdom through the night to reach the good news. Star of beauty, light of love, in you we find energy and inspiration, and so we fix our gaze on you. As the star comes to rest, may you see great faithfulness revealed in us. We pray these things in the name of your Son, the child of Bethlehem, the one who taught us to pray, our Father, who art in heaven. Hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. A few more announcements. Board meeting today, right after church here in the sanctuary. Please attend if you are involved in that decision-making body. Bunny has updated just the directory portion of the yearbook. We'll look later on this year about maybe redoing the pictures too, but a lot of addresses and things have changed. So she's redone that. If you would like to have a copy of that, she can send you an electronic copy in Word so that when additional updates happen, you can just change them on your own. Or there's some printed ones out in the lobby, I think, or we can get one to you. So that's just the directory part. Hillcrest apartment sponsors, time to get that renewed for this year. And then this time of year, past years, if you have blankets or coats or warm clothing that you'd like to get out of your house, or new stuff are certainly welcome as well. Blankets are always needed at Micah Ministry for the people that they work with that are often on the street. Blankets get wet and gross and destroyed and lost very often, so those are always being renewed. We bring those into the church. I'll get them down to those folks. All right, our communion hymn today is Come Share the Lord. Please remain seated as we sing.
We thank you, Lord, for your unconditional love for us. Help us and our families to model your teachings here on earth and to follow your will each day, so that our lives are the best possible example for others. These things we pray in your name. Amen.
Final hymn today is the first Noel. Let's stand and sing together. Christmas, written by Howard Thurman. When the song of the angels is stilled, when the star in the sky is gone, when the kings and princes are home, when the shepherds are back with their flock, the work of Christmas begins. to find the lost, to heal the broken, to feed the hungry, to release the prisoner, to rebuild the nations, to bring peace among others, to make music in the heart. Amen.